What's going down at Hallis Hall right now could completely reshape the future of this franchise. While Ryan Poles is staring down some brutal decisions with the salary cap, there's one move that nobody saw coming, and it could shake this team to its core. We're talking about a star wideout with $24.5 million on the line, a running back who thought he'd be rocking navy and orange, and a $106 million edge rusher who could form the most lethal duo in the NFL next to Montez Sweat. This is not a drill, Bears fans. Stick around till the end, because what's coming is straight up explosive. If you love this team, smash that like button right now and subscribe, because tomorrow we've got even more bombs coming your way. DJ Moore, look, I'm going to keep it real with y'all. After everything we've built, after watching Caleb Williams grow right in front of our eyes, after finally landing a head coach in Ben Johnson who actually gets what it means to win in Chicago, now we're hearing that one of our most important receivers might be on the trade block. And we're not talking about just any receiver. We're talking about the guy who signed a $110 million extension just 2 years ago, DJ Moore. That name echoes through Soldier Field, right? The guy who was supposed to be the key piece in Caleb's development. The receiver Ryan Poles brought in through that Carolina trade that also landed us our franchise quarterback. Well, Bill Barnwell from ESPN just listed him as one of the most likely wideouts to get traded this offseason. And you know what's wild? It actually makes sense. Let me break down the financials, because this is critical to understanding why Poles might be considering this. The Chicago Bears are currently $5.3 million over the salary cap. That's right, over. That means before we even think about signing free agents, before we even talk about bringing back guys like Kevin Byard, CJ Gardner-Johnson, or Jaquan Brisker, Poles has to find a way to clear space. And that's where DJ Moore enters the picture in a way nobody expected. Moore's base salary for 2026 is $23.5 million, and it's already fully guaranteed. That money is locked in, but here's the kicker. If Moore is still on the roster by mid-March, another $15.5 million from his 2027 salary becomes fully guaranteed too. You see what that means? It means any team that has Moore, whether it's Chicago or someone who trades for him, is basically locked into a 1-year, $40 million deal or a 2-year, $49 million deal before they can even think about restructuring or renegotiating after 2027. Now, when Poles signed Moore to that 4-year, $110 million extension in the summer of 2024, we all thought it was the right move. Caleb had just been drafted number 1 overall. We needed to give him weapons. We needed stability in the receiver room. Moore was coming off a solid season and looked like exactly what this team needed. But things change fast in the NFL, don't they? Look at Moore's 2025 numbers. 50 catches, 682 yards, 6 touchdowns. Decent numbers, not bad. But when you're paying a guy $23.5 million a year, you don't want decent. You want elite. You want 1,200 yards. You want double-digit touchdowns. You want a guy who's a matchup nightmare every single week. And here's the question I keep asking myself. Were those numbers because Moore lost a step? Or was it because the chemistry between him and Caleb just never clicked the way we hoped? Because I watched those games, Bears fans, you did too. There were moments where Caleb looked Moore's way and the timing just wasn't there. Routes where Moore was in one spot and Caleb expected him somewhere else. Crucial third downs where the connection just didn't happen. And you know what? That's not necessarily anyone's fault. Sometimes the chemistry just isn't there. Sometimes a quarterback and a receiver just don't sync up, no matter how much they practice. It happens all the time in the NFL. But when you're paying $23.5 million a year, you can't afford to wait for chemistry to develop, not when you've got young receivers flashing big-time potential. Let's talk about Rome Odunze, the rookie we drafted in the first round in 2024. The guy out of Washington who showed exactly why he was a top 10 pick. Odunze's got the hands, the size, the ability to win one-on-ones against top corners. And most importantly, he's got natural chemistry with Caleb Williams. Then there's Luther Burden III, My God, Bears fans, this kid might be special. We took him in the second round in 2025, and from day one, he looked like he belonged. Burden's got that after-the-catch explosiveness you just can't teach. He's versatile, can line up in the slot, outside, even in the backfield. Ben Johnson can use him in so many different ways. And don't forget about Colston Loveland, the tight end, who finally gives Chicago what we've been missing since Greg Olsen left. Loveland can block, run routes, be a safety blanket for Caleb on third down. He's exactly what a modern NFL tight end needs to be. So here's the reality. When you've got Odunze emerging as your potential WR1, when you've got Burden flashing star potential, when you've got Loveland giving you elite production at tight end, do you really need to invest $24.5 million in a fourth receiver who didn't even crack 700 yards? I don't think so. And I think Ryan Poles is coming to the same conclusion. But here's the part that really has me thinking. Ben Johnson and his offensive philosophy. When Johnson was in Detroit as OC, you know what he did? He built one of the most explosive offenses in the league without a $100 million receiver. Amon-Ra St. Brown was his top guy, and St. Brown is fantastic. But he's not making $23.5 million a year. Johnson used motion, play action, creative schemes to create mismatches. He doesn't need elite talent at every position to succeed. He maximizes the talent he has through scheme. And that's exactly what we saw in Chicago this season. The Bears had the third best rushing offense in the entire NFL. Third, with DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai. And you know how much we paid Swift? Way less than $23.5 million. Monangai, 7th round pick, who contributed right away. That's elite coaching, Bears fans. That's having a system that works regardless of whether you've got big names or not. So when I look at the full picture, salary cap, young receivers, Ben Johnson's philosophy, I start to understand why trading DJ Moore might be the right move for this franchise. And here's the other side of the equation. What could we do with that $24.5 million? We could re-sign Kevin Byard, the veteran safety who was crucial to our defense in 2025. Byard's an unrestricted free agent, and he's going to have a market. But if we want to keep that secondary together, we've got to pay him. We could re-sign CJ Gardner-Johnson, another safety who proved to be exactly what Dennis Allen needs in his scheme. Gardner-Johnson can play near the line, cover, blitz. He's versatile, and that versatility is valuable. We could hit free agency and bring in an interior defensive lineman who can collapse the pocket. Because let's be honest, Bears fans, we need more pressure up the middle. Montez Sweat is a beast off the edge. But we need to complement that with interior heat. Or, and this is what really gets me fired up, we could use that cap space as part of a package to trade for an elite player. Someone like, well, we'll get to that in the next segment. But first, let's talk about what this means for DJ Moore as a person and a player. Look, I've got nothing but respect for DJ Moore. The guy came to Chicago, worked hard, never caused problems in the locker room. He's a pro. But in the NFL, sometimes business is business. Sometimes you've got to make tough calls to build a better team long term. Remember when Poles traded Roquan Smith? Everyone thought he was crazy. Roquan was our best linebacker, the heart of the defense, a leader. But Poles knew we couldn't pay him what he wanted and still build a complete roster. So he flipped him to Baltimore for picks. And what happened? We used those picks to build. We brought in young talent. We created cap flexibility. And now look at us, in the playoffs, with a young, talented roster. Poles plays the long game. Bears fans. He doesn't get emotional. He does what's best for the organization, even when it's hard. And if trading DJ Moore is what we need to do to build a dominant defense, then I trust that move. Now, what kind of return could we expect in a trade for Moore? Bill Barnwell suggests a mid-round pick is realistic. I'm talking 3rd or 4th round. That might not sound like much, but remember, the real value here isn't the pick. The real value is the $24.5 million in cap space we free up. And for a team that needs a veteran receiver, Moore still has value. He's 28, still productive, still a contributor. A team like the Chargers, who need receiver help, might be interested. The Steelers, always looking for weapons, could make a call. Even the Patriots, who are rebuilding, might see Moore as a vet who can help develop their young QB. The market's there. The question is Ryan Poles ready to pull the trigger? I think he is. I think Poles sees what I see. He sees Odunze and Burden as the future of the receiver room. He sees Loveland as a key piece of the offense. He sees that Ben Johnson can make this offense work without a $23 million receiver. And more importantly, Poles sees that those $24.5 million can be better spent elsewhere on the roster. Because at the end of the day, Bears fans, this isn't about DJ Moore the person. This is about building a championship team. This is about maximizing every dollar of the salary cap. This is about putting the Chicago Bears in position to compete for a Super Bowl, not just in 2026, but in 2027, 2028, and beyond. And you know what really tells me this could happen? Poles isn't afraid to make tough calls. He's done it before. He traded Khalil Mack when everyone thought he was untouchable. Let Akiem Hicks walk. Traded Roquan Smith. Every time people questioned the moves, and every time Poles proved he knew exactly what he was doing. This is the new era of Chicago Bears football. Bears fans. An era where decisions are made based on data, analysis, and long-term roster building, not emotions, not names, not past contracts. And if that means DJ Moore has to go so this team can reach its full potential, so be it. Maxx Crosby. If that last part shocked you, just wait till you hear this. Because while we're talking about clearing cap space and moving assets to create financial flexibility, there's a very specific reason Ryan Poles might be doing all of this. And that reason has a name, Maxx Crosby. Yeah, you heard that right. The edge rusher from the Las Vegas Raiders, the guy who's been to 5 straight Pro Bowls, the guy with 2 All-Pro selections, the guy who's an absolute nightmare for quarterbacks. Bleacher Report just named Maxx Crosby as the top trade target for the Chicago Bears this offseason. And I'm telling you right now, if Poles pulls this off, if he brings Crosby to Chicago, this team becomes an instant Super Bowl contender. But before we talk about what Crosby could bring to this defense, let me explain why this trade is even possible in the first place. Maxx Crosby is frustrated in Vegas. And I'm not talking about we lost a few games. Frustrated. I'm talking deep, systemic frustration that's been building for years. The Raiders have wasted the prime of Crosby's career. Think about it. The guy's been playing at an all-pro level since 2021. 4 straight years of domination. 4 years of being one of the best edge rushers in the entire league. And what does he have to show for it? 0 playoff appearances. 0. A player of that caliber, with that kind of production, deserves to play in January. Deserves a shot at a ring, and the Raiders just haven't given him that. But here's the part that really makes this trade possible. At the end of the 2025 season, there was serious tension between Crosby and the Raiders organization over how they handled his knee injury. According to reports, Crosby felt like the Raiders medical staff didn't handle his injury properly. He felt pressured to play when he wasn't fully healthy, and when he finally voiced his concerns, he felt like the organization didn't have his back. That's huge, Bears fans, because when a player loses trust in a team's medical staff, when they feel like their long-term health isn't a priority, that relationship is broken, and it's hard to come back from that. So here's the situation. You've got a 28-year-old edge rusher in his absolute prime, frustrated with his current team, playing for a franchise that's clearly rebuilding and probably open to a fresh start. And on the other side, you've got the Chicago Bears, a team that's 1 or 2 pieces away from being a legit contender. A team with a franchise quarterback in Caleb Williams. A team with a head coach in Ben Johnson, who's considered one of the brightest offensive minds in football. A team with a rich tradition of dominant defense. You see how this fits perfectly? Now let me break down exactly what Maxx Crosby would bring to this defense. First, the raw stats. Over the last 4 seasons, Crosby has hit double-digit sacks in 3 of them. We're talking 12.5 sacks in 2021, 8.5 in 2022 while playing hurt, 14.5 in 2023, and 10 sacks in 2025. But sacks only tell part of the story with Crosby, because his real impact goes way beyond just getting to the quarterback. In 2022 and 2023, Crosby led the entire NFL in tackles for loss. Not just edge rushers, not just AFC players, the whole league. That's insane. And in 2025, he had 28 tackles for loss. 28. For context, the average for an elite edge rusher is around 15 to 18 per season. Crosby had 10 more than that. You know what that means in real terms? It means Crosby isn't just a pass rusher. He's blowing up run plays in the backfield. He's forcing offensive coordinators to game plan around him. He's dictating how the other team plays offense. When you've got a guy who demands that much attention, who forces teams to dedicate extra blockers just to slow him down, that opens up opportunities for everyone else on your defense. Now imagine this. Maxx Crosby on one side of the defensive line, Montez Sweat on the other. My God, Bears fans, that would be devastating. Montez Sweat had 10 sacks in 2025. That's solid production. But you know why he didn't have 15 or 16? Because teams could slide protection his way. They could leave a tight end in to help. They could chip with a running back. But what happens when you've got Maxx Crosby on the other side? How do you slide protection when both edges are elite? Who do you help? Who do you leave one-on-one? The answer is you can't help both. And that's when the magic happens. Picture a 3rd and long. Quarterback in shotgun. Crosby lined up on the left edge. Sweat on the right. The ball is snapped and both explode off the line. The offensive line has to choose help Crosby or help Sweat. No matter what they choose, one of those guys is getting a favorable matchup. And when you've got players of that caliber, a favorable matchup means the quarterback's got about 2.5 seconds before his world collapses. But here's what really excites me about bringing in Crosby, what it does for the rest of the defense. Dennis Allen, our defensive coordinator, is known for creating complex schemes that confuse quarterbacks. But even the best schemes need time to develop. You need your pass rush to buy time for your coverage to work. With Crosby and Sweat creating constant pressure, Allen can do anything on the back end. He can run exotic coverages. He can blitz safeties from wild angles. He can play man coverage, knowing the quarterback won't have time to wait for routes to develop. And speaking of safeties, think about what this means for guys like Kevin Byard and CJ Gardner-Johnson. Byard is one of the smartest safeties in the league. The guy reads quarterbacks like a book. But even the best instincts don't matter if the quarterback has all day to throw. With Crosby and Sweat collapsing the pocket, Byard can sit in his zones, read the play, and make those game-changing picks we've seen throughout his career. Gardner-Johnson is a different animal. He's aggressive, physical, loves to blitz, loves to play near the line. But when you blitz, you leave your coverage vulnerable unless your pass rush gets home. With Crosby and Sweat, Gardner-Johnson can be ultra-aggressive, knowing that even if his blitz doesn't land, one of those two will. And let's not forget about the impact on our young defensive lineman. Gervon Dexter, our third-year defensive tackle, has talent. He's still learning. But imagine what it would mean for Dexter to practice every day against an offensive line that has to prepare for Crosby and Sweat. Imagine what he'd learn just by watching how Crosby works, how he studies film, how he prepares. Zach Pickens, another young D-lineman, would be in the same boat. These guys would get to learn from one of the best in the business. That's invaluable for their development. But here's the million-dollar question. What would it take for Chicago to land Maxx Crosby? Because let's be real, Bears fans, the Raiders aren't just going to give away a player like this. Even if Crosby wants out, even if there's tension, Vegas is going to want a serious return. Crosby is 28, in his prime, on a 4-year, $106 million deal that runs through 2028. He's a valuable asset. Alex Ballentine from Bleacher Report says the Bears have the pieces to make this trade happen. And he's right. First, we've got picks. Chicago has 3 selections in the top 100 of the April draft. That includes our first rounder, probably somewhere in the 20 to 25 range, based on our record. We've got our second rounder, and we've got another top 3-round pick. Those picks have value, especially in a draft that's deep with defensive talent. Second, we've got young players who could be part of a package. I'm not saying we give up our top young guys like Rome Odunze or Luther Burden, But we've got depth at certain spots that a rebuilding team like the Raiders might value. And third, if we trade DJ Moore first, we've got the cap space to absorb Crosby's contract without blinking. So a realistic package might look like this: our 2026 first rounder, our 2026 third rounder, and maybe a young player or a conditional 2027 pick. Is that a lot? Yeah, absolutely. But let me ask you this. What's it worth to have one of the best edge duos in the NFL? What's it worth to take your defense from good to elite? What's it worth to give Caleb Williams a defense that can win games on its own? To me, it's worth every pick, because here's the reality. This is our window. Caleb Williams is on his rookie deal for 3 more years. That means we're not paying 40 or 50 million a year for a quarterback. These are the years where you can invest in other positions. The Rams understood this when they had Jared Goff on his rookie deal. They went all in, traded for Jalen Ramsey, traded for Marcus Peters, built a Super Bowl roster around a cheap quarterback. The Eagles did the same with Jalen Hurts. They were aggressive in free agency, traded for A.J. Brown, built a complete roster while Hurts was still cheap. Now it's our turn. Bears fans, now is the time to be aggressive. Now is the time to go all in. And Maxx Crosby is exactly the kind of player you go all in for. But there's another layer to this I want to talk about. What Crosby would bring to the culture of this team. Crosby is known around the league for his insane work ethic. First one in the building, last one out. Watches film like a maniac. Stays in the gym year-round. Plays through pain. Never takes a playoff. That's exactly the mindset Dennis Allen wants in his defense. That's exactly the mindset that fits Chicago's tradition. From the days of Dick Butkus to Mike Singletary to Brian Urlacher, this city has been built on physical, dominant defense. Defense that intimidates. Defense that sets the tone. Defense that wins championships. Crosby brings that mentality back to Soldier Field. Imagine the impact in the locker room. Imagine young players watching how Crosby prepares, how he competes, how he leads. That raises the standard for everyone. And speaking of leadership, Crosby is vocal. He's not afraid to demand excellence from his teammates. He's not afraid to call someone out if they're not giving max effort. That's what you need in a defensive leader. Montez Sweat is fantastic, but he's more quiet, more reserved. Having Crosby as that vocal alpha would perfectly complement Sweat. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. He's 28. Isn't it risky to trade picks for a guy that close to 30? And look, that's a fair concern. But here's the thing. Edge rushers can play at a high level into their early 30s. Von Miller was dominant until 32. Cameron Jordan is still productive at 34. Khalil Mack just had a big year at 33. Edge rusher isn't like running back where you fall off a cliff at 28. If you take care of your body, you can play at a high level for years. And Crosby takes care of his body obsessively. The guy doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, follows a strict diet, does yoga to stay flexible. He does everything right to extend his career. So when I weigh the risk versus the reward, when I think about what Crosby could do for this defense, when I consider our window with Caleb on a rookie deal, the risk is completely worth it. And think about it from Crosby's perspective. The guy's been stuck on a losing team for years. He's desperate to win, desperate to play in January, desperate for a shot at a ring. If he comes to Chicago, he gets all of that. He gets a young, talented quarterback, a brilliant head coach, a defense that's already solid and becomes elite with him. A city that loves physical defense. Crosby would be more motivated than ever. He'd be playing with a chip on his shoulder, determined to prove the Raiders made a mistake letting him go. That kind of motivation is dangerous for the rest of the NFL. And finally, let's talk about what this would mean for our rivalry with the Packers. Green Bay has owned this division for way too long. From Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, they've had elite quarterback play year after year. They've won the division over and over. They've made the playoffs consistently. But you know what? Even the best quarterback in the world can't do anything if he's constantly under pressure, if he's getting hit, if he's being forced into quick decisions. Imagine Jordan Love trying to run his offense with Maxx Crosby and Montez Sweat coming after him every snap. Imagine how hard it would be for him to hit those deep shots he loves. Imagine how uncomfortable he'd be in the pocket. That completely changes the dynamic of the division. The Lions have a solid defense, but their pass rush isn't dominant. The Vikings are rebuilding. The Packers, even with Love, would be vulnerable to an elite pass rush. Suddenly, Chicago isn't just competing in the division. Chicago is dominating the division. And that's what we want, right, Bears fans? We want to get back to the days when Soldier Field was a fortress, when teams were afraid to come here, when Chicago's defense was the most feared in the NFL. Maxx Crosby puts us on that path. So yeah, it's gonna cost picks. It's gonna cost money. It's gonna require Ryan Poles to get creative with the cap. But I'm telling you right now, if there's any GM in the league who can make this work, it's Ryan Poles. Poles has proven time and time again that he knows how to build a roster. He knows how to find value. He knows when to be patient and when to be aggressive. And this is the time to be aggressive. Treveyon Henderson. And just when you thought we were done, let me tell you something that shows how close we were to having a completely different backfield this season. Treveyon Henderson, the Ohio State running back who ended up getting drafted by the New England Patriots in the second round of the 2025 draft. The guy who's now playing in the Super Bowl as a rookie. Turns out Henderson thought he was going to be a Chicago Bear, and not just kind of thought it. He was convinced Ryan Poles was going to call his name. In a recent interview with CHGO Sports, Henderson broke down exactly what happened on draft night. And Bears fans, this story is fascinating because it gives us a real look into how the draft process works and how last-minute decisions can completely change the future of a franchise. Let me set the scene. It's draft night 2025. Henderson is at home with his family, watching the coverage on TV. His agent has told him there are several teams interested, but Chicago has shown the strongest interest. The Bears did their homework. They talked to him extensively. They made it clear they valued him highly. So Henderson's sitting there, nervous like any prospect, waiting for his name to be called. And here's the crazy part. His TV feed was a little delayed, maybe 30 to 45 seconds behind the live broadcast. When his phone rings, Henderson looks at the screen and sees the Chicago Bears are on the clock. The Bears are about to make their pick. His heart starts racing. This is it. This is the moment. His dream is about to come true. He answers the phone, expecting to hear Ryan Poles or Matt Eberflus say, "Welcome to Chicago. You're a Bear." But nope, it's Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. When I got the call, my TV was a little behind, and the Chicago Bears, I thought they were up, Henderson said. And when I got the phone call, I thought it was the Chicago Bears, and they told me it was the New England Patriots. I was smiling, but my heart sank at the same time. Can you imagine that feeling? Thinking you're going to one team, only to find out you're headed somewhere completely different? But here's the part that really shows how Henderson felt. During the draft process, everyone was telling me the Patriots were the last team you wanted to go to. I was believing what they were saying. I was trying to avoid the Patriots at all costs. But then they picked me, and it was such a crazy moment. Think about that for a second. Henderson was actively hoping not to go to New England. Not because the Patriots are a bad organization, but because in 2025, they were clearly rebuilding. They had a rough 2024 season. No established quarterback, uncertain offensive direction. Meanwhile, Chicago had Caleb Williams, the #1 overall pick from the year before. They had Ben Johnson, one of the most respected offensive minds in the league. They had an offense clearly on the rise. For a young running back, Chicago was the perfect landing spot. New England, not so much. But here's what makes this story even more interesting. The pre-draft reports. There were multiple reports linking Chicago specifically to Treveyon Henderson. Not just vague rumors, credible insiders saying the Bears had done extensive scouting on Henderson, that they loved him, that they saw him as the perfect complement to DeAndre Swift. And here's the bombshell. One report said the Bears actually tried to trade up to draft Henderson. Trade up! That means Poles was willing to give up extra assets, probably mid or late round picks, just to make sure they got Henderson before someone else did. That tells you how highly the front office valued this player. So what happened? Why did Henderson end up in New England and not Chicago? Well, here's how it went down, according to reports. Ashton Jeanty, the Boise State running back and consensus RB1, went 6th overall to Jacksonville. That was expected. Jeanty was seen as a generational talent. That left Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, another Ohio State back, as the next best options. The Bears, picking in the second round somewhere around pick 45 to 50, knew both could be off the board by the time they were up, so they tried to trade up. But here's the thing. Trading up in the draft is hard. You've got to find a team willing to move down. You've got to agree on compensation. And you've got to do it all in the limited time you're on the clock. Apparently, Poles couldn't find a trade partner that made sense. Either the price was too high, or teams just didn't want to move. So the Bears had to sit and wait, hoping Henderson would fall to them. But he didn't. New England, picking just a few spots ahead of Chicago, took him. And by the time the Bears were on the clock, Henderson was gone. Judkins was gone. The top two backs after Jeanty were off the board. So Ryan Poles had a decision to make. Force a pick on a lower-tier running back or pivot to another position. Poles pivoted, and he took Luther Burden III, the wide receiver from Missouri. At the time, some fans were confused. Why didn't we take a running back? That was a need. But Poles knew something most fans didn't. He already had his running back, Kyle Monangai, 7th round, pick 234 overall, a running back from Rutgers who didn't get much national attention, but the Bears scouting department had identified him as a potential steal. And you know what? They were right. Monangai contributed immediately in 2025, showed great vision between the tackles, ran with power, was a willing pass protector, did everything you want from a modern NFL back. And we got him in the 7th round. While other teams were spending 2nd and 3rd round picks on backs, we found one at the end of the draft. That's the difference between a good scouting department and an elite one. But let's go back to Henderson for a second, because his rookie season has been incredible. Despite going to a situation he didn't want, despite being on a rebuilding team, Henderson had a fantastic rookie year. Rushed for over 1,100 yards, scored 8 rushing touchdowns, added nearly 400 receiving yards. And now he's playing in the Super Bowl as a rookie. That's wild. So the natural question is, did Chicago make a mistake by not getting Henderson? And look, I get why some fans might think that. Henderson's been awesome. Clearly, a special talent. But here's the thing. Everything worked out perfectly for Chicago without him. Let me explain why. First, DeAndre Swift. The veteran back we signed in free agency had a solid season, rushed for 980 yards and 7 touchdowns. But more importantly, Swift gave Caleb Williams exactly what a young quarterback needs. A reliable back who can do everything. Swift can run inside, bounce it outside, catch passes, block in pass pro. He's a complete back. And for a rookie QB like Caleb, that kind of versatility is invaluable. It means you don't have to change personnel on 3rd down. You can keep the same formation and run different plays. The defense can't key in on what's coming based on who's in the backfield. Second, Kyle Monangai. Like I said, the 7th round rookie contributed right away. But what really impressed me about Monangai was his football IQ. The guy picked up the playbook fast, knew his protection assignments, knew when to be patient and when to hit the hole. Those are things that usually take time for rookies. But Monangai got it almost immediately. That speaks to his intelligence and work ethic. And together, Swift and Monangai gave Ben Johnson exactly what he needed for his offense. Johnson loves having 2 backs who can do different things. In Detroit, he had David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Montgomery was the power guy. Gibbs was the speed guy. He could mix and match based on game flow. In Chicago, he's got a similar setup with Swift and Monangai. Swift is the all-around back. Monangai is the power guy. Johnson can rotate them, keep defenses guessing. And here's the result. Chicago had the 3rd best rushing offense in the entire NFL in 2025. 3rd in the whole league. You know how many teams would kill for that? You know what that does for your offense? When you can run the ball effectively, everything opens up. Play action becomes deadly. Defenses have to respect the run, which means they can't overload coverage. Your O-line can play downhill instead of always being in pass pro. And we did it without spending a high pick on a running back. But here's the other part of the equation we can't ignore. Luther Burden III. Instead of using that second-round pick on Henderson, we used it on Burden. And Bears fans, this kid might be special. Burden came out of Missouri with an incredible resume. One of the most productive receivers in college football. He's got speed, hands, and the ability to separate. But what really excites me about Burden is his versatility. He can line up outside, in the slot, even in the backfield. Ben Johnson can move him all over the formation and create mismatches. In his rookie year, Burden showed flashes of what he can be. Had a few games where he was dominant, and this is just year one. Imagine what he'll be after a full off-season with Caleb, learning the playbook, building chemistry. I think Burden is going to be a WR1 in this league, and we got him in the second round. So when I look at the full picture, what we got versus what we would have gotten with Henderson, I think we made the right call. Is Henderson good? Absolutely. Would he have helped our roster? No doubt. But did we need to spend a second-round pick on him when we got similar production from Swift and Monangai and landed a potentially elite receiver in Burden? No, we didn't. And that's the mark of a smart front office. It's not just about getting good players. It's about maximizing the value of every pick. It's about building a balanced roster. It's about thinking 3, 4, 5 years ahead. Because here's the reality. Running backs have short shelf lives in the NFL. Average career is 3 to 4 years. Even the great ones rarely stay elite past 28 or 29. Wide receivers, on the other hand, can stay elite into their early 30s. They can give you 10 to 12 years of production. So from a long-term roster-building perspective, investing in a young receiver instead of a running back makes sense. And think about this. When DJ Moore eventually leaves, whether it's this year or next, who steps into that WR1 or WR2 role? Rome Odunze is the obvious answer. But you need depth. You need multiple threats, so defenses can't just key in on one guy. Luther Burden gives us that. Another weapon for Caleb. A Bard Castle. Another third down option. Another guy defenses have to respect. And meanwhile, our run game is humming with Swift and Monangai. So yeah, Treveyon Henderson thought he was going to be a Bear. And honestly, it would have been cool to have him. The guy's a baller, and I wish him nothing but success in New England. But the decisions Ryan Poles made instead, they turned out to be better for the future of this franchise. And that's what separates good GMs from elite GMs. Good GMs make the obvious picks. They fill needs with the most obvious player available. Elite GMs think deeper. They consider positional value, long-term roster construction, multiple ways to fill a need. Poles is an elite GM, and this Henderson situation is a perfect example of that. So there you have it, Bears fans. 3 stories that could completely change the direction of this franchise. DJ Moore, a wideout who's given us some solid moments, might be on his way out to free up the cap space. We need to make big moves. Is it the right call to trade a productive vet and bet on young guns like Odunze and Burden? I think so, but I want to hear what you think. Do you trust Roman Luther to take this receiver room to the next level? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Maxx Crosby, an elite edge rusher who could form the most dominant defensive duo this city has seen in decades alongside Montez Sweat. Imagine that constant pressure. Imagine Jordan Love running for his life twice a year. Imagine Dennis Allen with those weapons in his toolbox. Is it worth giving up multiple first-rounders for a player of that caliber? Or should we play it safe and build through the draft? I'm telling you, when you've got a window, you go all in. But I want to hear your take. Comment below if you think we should make the move for Crosby and Treveyon Henderson, the running back who almost became a Bear but ended up taking the Patriots to the Super Bowl in his rookie year. His story shows us that sometimes things happen for a reason. We didn't get Henderson, but we got Luther Burden. We got Kyle Monangai in the 7th round, and we ended up with the 3rd best rushing offense in the NFL. Was it the right move to prioritize Burden over Henderson? Should we have traded up to lock in the back we wanted? Let me know what you think. Because at the end of the day, Bears fans, this is about more than just headlines. This is about the future of our franchise. This is about the decisions that will determine whether we bring a championship back to Chicago or stay stuck in mediocrity. And I believe in Ryan Poles. I believe in Ben Johnson. I believe in Dennis Allen. I believe this front office knows exactly what it's doing. But you know what else I believe? I believe you, the most passionate fan base in the NFL, deserve a voice in these conversations. You deserve a space to debate, to break things down, to share your takes on this team we all love. And that's exactly what this channel is. This isn't just a YouTube channel where I talk and you listen. This is a community. This is a family of Bears fans who bleed navy and orange. Fans who've suffered through the bad years and are ready to celebrate the good ones. So if you want to be part of this family, if you want to stay locked in on every move the Bears make this off-season, if you want deep analysis that goes beyond the surface-level headlines, then subscribe right now. Because I promise you, tomorrow we've got more explosive news. I promise you, this off-season is going to be wild. I promise you, Ryan Poles is not done making moves, and you do not want to miss a second of what's coming. Smash that like button if you think Poles should trade more and bring in Crosby. Smash that. Like if you trust the vision of this front office, smash that. Like if you believe the Chicago Bears are about to start a dynasty. Subscribe if you want daily breakdowns of everything. Bears, subscribe if you want to be part of the most informed fan base in the NFL. Subscribe if you love this team as much as I do. And comment. Comment what move you want to see first. Comment if you agree or disagree with my takes. Comment your own ideas for how to improve this roster. Because that conversation, that debate, that shared passion, that's what makes being a Bears fan so special. We've waited decades for this moment. Bears fans, decades for a franchise quarterback, decades for an elite head coach, decades for a front office that actually knows how to build a winner. Now we've got it. Now all the pieces are in place, and now it's time to go all in. It's time to make the bold moves that take us to the next level. It's time to bring the Lombardi Trophy back to Chicago, where it belongs. Bear down. Chicago, this is just the beginning. I'll see you in the next video, where we're going even deeper into these topics. We're breaking down the salary cap in detail. We're looking at potential trade packages for Crosby. We're diving into the draft and which players fit our system. Don't miss it. Subscribe now. Bear down. Dar Bears. Navy and orange forever.